"Watson," Sherlock Holmes glared at me, "kindly recall that Mr. Garland is here to report a possible murder." "Plenty of time for that, Holmes," said I, holding up my hand. "Let him first tell us about his passion for sport." Rare was the occasion that Sherlock Holmes and I disagreed in front of a client, but such was indeed the case that memorable spring day in 1899. I, for one, hoped to learn more about the intricacies of American baseball from the brown-bearded author from the States who stood before us. Hamlin Garland had just returned to London after visiting some well-known personages in Surrey, including my literary agent, Arthur Conan Doyle, a man, must be said, who fancied himself a baseball enthusiast. Yet Holmes had little use for Garland's posturing at the centre of our room to illustrate the meeting with Conan Doyle. After all, besides the alleged murder that Garland said had brought him to Baker Street in the first place, there were more important matters in the world than sport with which to concern oneself. What of the escalating differences between the British and the Boers in South Africa, or the battles America was fighting with revolutionaries in the Philippines? Still, one could see a purpose in encouraging Garland to talk about his favourite diversion. At the very least, it might serve to brighten his demeanour. The author presented a gruff and deprecatory attitude, despite the thousands in royalties he'd reportedly received from Macmillan's for his recently published Main-Travelled Roads, an account of the hopelessness of rural life in Midwestern America. Why, after only little more than a week in our fair city, he complained that London, the centre of the greatest empire in the world, had not lived up to his expectations. "Not toweringly impressive," was the way he described it in his clear, high-pitched voice. He faltered the yellow pall that overhung the buildings, the ugly omnibuses clogging the streets, and the dingy and dark atmosphere that seemed to permeate every corner. At first I was distinctly put off by his negative point of view, but I soon came to realize that it was not London itself that had so distressed Garland, but rather cities in general. To Hamlin Garland, London merely served as a surrogate for any city in which he might find himself. It was life in the country that he seemed to miss, and he had a difficult time concealing his melancholy. Yet when he talked about baseball, whose playing fields offered the verdant and earthy hues of a bucolic landscape, his attitude changed. His voice, dropping to a rich baritone, took on a musical cadence. He was, I knew, a successful public orator, and understood how to maintain an audience's attention. To that end, I kicked aside the bearskin hearthrug to provide him the space to further dramatize his account. For his part, Sherlock Holmes picked up a copy of the Times and positioned himself behind its pages. Even as Hamlin Garland stood with his back to me, an imaginary baseball in hand, I could sense the energy that marked his spirit. In that respect, the 40-year-old author seemed like a child. Stretching to his full 6-foot height, he spoke over his shoulder. "Doyle and I tossed the ball around in '94 when I first met him in America." Turning slightly, he cradled the imaginary ball at the middle of his chest, a few inches below his beard. With his thick brown hair combed straight back, his feet together and his muscular arms readily apparent in his white shirt-sleeves, Garland presented quite the athletic frame, a physique he attributed to the years spent labouring so strenuously on his father's farms. "When I saw Doyle this time," Garland said, "he hoped to learn about the science of pitching. He wanted information about the break of our in-shoots and out-drops, not to mention, I love the way he put it, the pitcher's ability to confound the laws of astronomy by making a sphere alter its course in mid-air." "Watson," Holmes growled, "was not one baseballer this year enough for you?" I knew Holmes was referring to Stephen Crane, another American writer whom we had met a few months before. Crane had played the positions of catcher and shortstop in college, and like Conan Doyle, Crane too had tossed a ball with the very same Hamlin Garland. "Even though the sky was darkening," Garland continued, "Doyle led me out to his tennis court."
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.